Greetings, plant people. This is Brian's Plant Life. Today we're going to take a quick look around the production greenhouse and see what it is we have percolating along for our spring sales. So let's go take a look.
We will start here with the ever popular Zonal Geranium. A couple of photos from last season. Every plant needs to be identified, so there's always lots of labels to deal with. Here are bags of the cuttings as they come in from the specialist propagator. This is what we'll be working with, and as we look closely at them, you'll see they're not bright green like they've just been cut, but these in fact have been allowed to kind of dry off and heal over a little bit, and they make a undifferentiated cell mass called callus tissue is how the plant heals, and it's from that callus tissue that the roots start. So these have a bit of a head start on rooting. In fact, you can see a little root up there at about 1 o'clock. Little root just starting out. So we'll take these callus cuttings, direct stick them into a 4-inch pot, and here you can see they look just a little bit wilty, but we'll keep a light amount of mist on them. They're in a little bit warmer propagation house. They'll perk up, and it's not too long, a couple of weeks, and we have some roots. We move them out of the propagation area, and we'll put them here in a growing on house, get them staged out. You see the gaps in the bench. That's so that we can properly space the plants, give them each a little bit of room. We don't want to grow them pot tight. Now that's a group that was a couple weeks older, and then we move to the right here and a batch that's a couple weeks older than that. You can see they're starting to get some good growth on them. There you can see the spacing between the pots. I'll knock one out of its pot. Here we see roots making to the edge of the pot, starting to spread out. Not quite to the bottom yet, but look at those white, vigorous growing roots.
Anytime you knock a plant out of its pot like that, give it some water. Next, we'll take a look at ivy geraniums. Now these cuttings came in calloused, just like the zonal geraniums, but instead of sticking them into a 4-inch pot for 4-inch sales, these were put into the 50 cell trays. And the reason we did that was so that we'd have a nice compact root ball that we could pot up into these hanging baskets. So 3 plants to a basket. Here you can see some that are planted, some filled baskets ready to be planted, and then in the background the 50 cell trays of the rooted ivies getting ready to be potted up. So here we are, just in the process of planting, and if you take a look right there, one tip about planting is to make a hole and set your plant in it. Don't jam them down into the ground hard. Here's an older batch, starting to put some growth on. We'll need to put a hanger on them, get them up in the air. And then just like the zonals, these were direct stuck into a 4-inch pot. We'll sell these out the door in 4-inch so that people can take them home and make up their own containers and hanging baskets, etc. We'll round out the geranium group with the largest flowered one. That's the Martha Washington. And we handle these differently than the zonals and the ivies in that we don't buy in calloused cuttings. We save nicest, cleanest, healthiest plants from the year before, pot them up into these baskets as stock plants, and from them we propagate. We stick them into the 50 cells. It's a lengthier process since we don't have the head start of the calloused cutting, but then they get rooted out, and in the fall we get these planted up into the 4-inch pots, and that's how we'll sell them. Marthas like to grow slow and they like to grow cool. So these are sitting in a house. I think here during the daytime this was about 46 degrees. There you can see how they're spaced out and they're looking very, very nice. I want to keep them cool and compact. And now fuchsias. We handle these much in the same way we do the Martha Washingtons, in that we save back good clean stock, pot it up into larger containers, use these for our mother plants. We'll cut off those tips, take them into the propagation area, stick them into trays, put them under some mist and get them to root out. Hold them in those trays until it's time to plant them directly into the baskets. One of the keys to making nice fuchsia baskets is proper pinching. This little plant right here is growing straight up, and it'll continue to grow straight up. And when the days get long enough, temperatures are right, it'll set flower buds and start to blooming, which is wonderful, except it doesn't make a very full plant. So what we need to do is go in and pinch out the tips. And when we have a growing tip on a fuchsia and most other plants, at the base of the leaves, there are dormant buds just sitting and waiting. And as long as there's a growing tip, chemical signal goes out to those buds that, hey, you just need to sit here, be quiet, don't cause any trouble. But when we go in and take out that tip, oops, I wiped out the leaf also. Okay, when you take out that tip, those two side buds are then released to grow. And if I look around here a little bit, we'll see some examples of that. So like right here, tip was taken out a couple weeks back, and now you have two. And if they come up a little higher and take those two tips out, you'll have four. And so a series of pinchings is what makes these bush out and make a much nicer full basket. Now they won't bloom quite as early that way, but in the long run you'll get far more blooms. So we start fuchsias extra early and have time to put those pinches on. So once we get into reproductive mode, flowering mode, a little later in the season, the pinching is not as effective and it gets kind of late. So we want to do it early, get as many stems going as possible, and make us a nice full basket. So as we come back over here and look at these stock baskets, they've had many rounds of cuttings taken off of them, and that's why they're so full and bushy. We don't need to put very many more pinches on these, so they can start to bud up and bloom earlier than our new production. And so these will be the first baskets out this spring. These are newly stuck fuchsias in these 2 3/4 inch pots. We'll be putting those out for early sale for people who want to build their own baskets. So again, one of the keys to these things, to make them nice and full, is to take out that tip. Take out those growing tips, force the side buds to grow. And yeah, you sacrifice an early bloom, but you gain more branches and more blooms through the later season. So it's worth making that sacrifice. About a 10-inch pot, you'd maybe want to plant 4 of these to a pot. We have 3 in our baskets, but we're getting a lot earlier start than the customer would. So I usually suggest about 4. I guess if you wanted a lot faster color and more fullness to it, you could plant 5. But I think later in the season you'd be unhappy with the overcrowded aspect of it. So 3 to 4, depending on your patience level. We'll do a little more in-depth review of how to grow fuchsias in a future video. But there we go. a 2 3/4 inch crop. Pansy plugs. Getting these transplanted today. Looks like they're going into 4-packs. New baby violas in 4-packs. As well as pansies. These will be out the door in a few weeks. So this is Brian's Plant Life. Thanks for tagging along on this real brief greenhouse tour. Spring will get here eventually. Look forward to it. Anyway, thanks for watching and catch us on the next one. Bye-bye.